My opponent just spent a lot of time concentrating on why my argument is unreasonable, and I would like to take the opportunity to not only discuss why his arguments against me are invalid, but also to speak to the fact that he offers no alternate solution for the queer community to focus on. First, my opponent argues that it is a bad strategy to focus on the single issue of same-sex marriage. However, same-sex marriage is not just about marriage, but also about the 1,000 rights associated with it. Plus, my opponent states that we should focus on multiple issues at a time, which can't work. There are simply too many issues. Instead, keeping the focus on one issue, marriage, is a good way to then transition to other issues when we get closer to totally winning same-sex marriage. There are no other issues that queers are currently fighting for that will give them as many legal and social affirmation as marriage. Second, my opponent accuses me and lawmakers of trying to appear tolerant by arguing that same-sex marriage is the most important issue to fight because of how inclusive it is for identities other than gay men and women. Disregarding the fact that my opponent knows nothing of my contributions to the queer community and cannot speak to the personal sentiments of each lawmaker who supports same-sex marriage, I ask the viewers of this video, and my opponent, does it actually matter why a lawmaker would support same-sex marriage? If my opponent suggests that queer people would refuse the right to get married because of why the elected official voted to grant them those rights, then my opponent is mistaken. Next, my opponent argues that queer people should, quote, take it to the streets. But my opponent also argues that gay pride parades, which I would like to point out are in the streets, are a commodification of being queer. These points in conjunction with each other do not make sense. During pride parades, queers organize politically and celebrate their identities. The pride parades are not commodification of queer culture because they were created to mark the anniversary of the Stonewall Riots in 1969, which many view as the start of the queer revolution, and pride parades were started by queer people. The reason that so many people flock to the streets in June has less to do with capitalism than my opponent suggests. Fourth, my opponent said that because same-sex marriage requires engaging the state, that same-sex marriage is a bad goal. However, not only do 6 states allow same-sex marriage, but several other states recognize marriages performed in other states. Obviously, it is possible to educate an entire state on the facts of same-sex marriage to enact equality for gender and sexual minorities. But finally, I would like to draw attention to the fact that my opponent did not offer any other issues to be at the forefront of the queer movement, unless he attempted to suggest that queers should dismantle capitalism before securing same-sex marriage. If that is the case, then I would love to hear my opponent's strategy for making that a more popular endeavor than legalizing same-sex marriage in all 50 states.